All right, so here we are with the 2020 MacBook Air. This one here is the highest end processor model, the 1.2 gigahertz quad-core i7. The first time ever having a quad-core processor in a MacBook Air. This year, Apple is giving that to us in both the i5 and i7 on quad-core. So I went with the highest end configuration here. It seems like a lot of people aren't doing that. I see a lot of videos out there about the base model i3 and the i5. Not as many i7s. So it's going to be interesting to see if the i7 is actually worth the extra money over the i5. In addition to the quad-core i7, this one also has 16 gigs of RAM, and the RAM is now DDR4 low power, and you do have the 512 gig SSD as well. So on the left, you have, this is the 2018 MacBook Air, the first Retina MacBook Air that came out a couple years ago. Now, this and the 2019 are essentially identical in terms of specifications. The only difference is the 2019 has a slightly nicer screen with True Tone. So the 2018 on the left, and on the right is the new 2020 Air. But you can see on the outside, cosmetically, they are both absolutely identical. I have them both in the space gray color. You can get these in space gray, silver, or gold. No new colors for the 2020 model year, same as 2018 and 19. Yeah, they both look pretty much identical. Both have the two USB-C Thunderbolt 3 ports on one side of them, and on the other side have a headphone jack. And yeah, they're absolutely identical. I think the 2020 actually got a tiny bit heavier, but picking them up and filling them both, you can't notice a difference. They feel the same. Okay, so here they are opened up in the inside. Now they are also the same here. The screens are both exactly the same. However, this is where the one difference is cosmetically and also functionally. And probably the biggest, most exciting thing about this new 2020 model is the new Magic Keyboard compared to the infamous Butterfly keyboard. Finally, Apple is back on top again when it comes to laptop keyboards, because the keyboards of old, back in the day, were so good on the unibody MacBook Pros. Then they switched to Butterfly, and, well, it's a complete nightmare. Now, personally, I actually liked the Butterfly keyboard. I honestly, kind of, the feel of it really grew on me. I didn't mind it at all. I actually enjoyed it to an extent. But there was no denying the reliability issues of these things. Even this one here, after having it for like not even a year, I had issues with a couple keys starting to stick. Now, luckily, I was able to get compressed air and blow the dust from out of them, and it freed them up. I know a lot of times that doesn't even work, and the keys are just, broken, and you have to go to Apple and get them fixed. It was just a nightmare. Some people have had experiences where they had to keep going back to the Apple store 2 and 3 times. It's just ridiculous. So enough was enough for the Butterfly keyboards. Finally moved on to the Magic Keyboard. I feel like a whole world is so happy about that of Apple users. And they feel like the old style MacBook keyboards, but they also incorporate some of the clickiness of the Butterfly keyboards, but having the reliability and key travel of the old style keyboards. So really, the best keyboard Apple has made yet. Cosmetically, the keyboards do look a little different. The biggest area is the arrow keys. The inverted T, as they call it. Instead of filling in the side arrow buttons all the way to the top, as you can see they do on this model here. A lot of people are excited about that. I mean, I don't really mind, it being like this. I don't really have a problem with that. I guess some people did, though, and, well, lucky for them, it went back to this style. Aesthetically, I don't know if you can tell, but the Touch ID button on the 2018 model here is a glossy black, and they decided to make it a matte black on the 2020 model to match the other keys. I mean, it never really bothered me as matte as being glossy, but I guess matte does look nicer, so whatever. They did the same exact thing on the 16-inch MacBook Pro that came out, and I guess they just wanted to keep it consistent here. Other than that, I will say aesthetically, you could tell these keys do sit up higher from the computer itself because, well, it makes sense because there's more key travel, so it is a thicker keyboard, whereas these are more flush, almost like painted on to the computer itself. So if you can see a side profile, where you can definitely see the Magic Keyboard on the 2020 does raise up a bit. Compare that to the butterfly keyboard, which it's pretty darn flush. I will say, aesthetically, I almost like the butterfly a little bit better. It has a slightly sleeker look to it. I don't know, it just does. I mean, not that this looks bad. I mean, it just looks like a keyboard should look, but it's I don't know, it's sleeker. It's well, basically what it is form over function. Whereas Apple went back to favoring function in the Magic Keyboard. I'll take it, though. I'm really happy they went back to the actual reliable keyboard, though. So here they are on the 2020, the 2018. Again, one thing I'll say, aesthetically, I still kind of favor the butterfly keyboard. With the backlighting, it just seems more even and precise. You don't have like bleeding light through the keys. Whereas, yeah, you can see some unevenness in the lighting. Again, this being super nitpicky, I'm still so happy to have a Magic Keyboard, an actual good, reliable keyboard that's not going to break. But aesthetically, yeah, I still give the butterfly the edge aesthetically. Speaking of the keyboard, I should do a little sound test here of what each keyboard sounds like. You can definitely hear the sort of clickiness and punchiness of the Retina here. This one has a sort of more hollow sound to it. You definitely get more key travel on the Magic Keyboard. Even if you're someone who thought the Retina keyboard was actually pretty good as far as typing feel, I think you'll definitely like the Magic Keyboard. It definitely does feel better. Now is probably a good time to talk a little bit performance. Now, the 2018 MacBook Air, I've never really felt that it was horribly slow. Both of these, even the 2018, has very fast SSDs in them. So, for everyday tasks, it's going to feel, it always did feel snappy. But there were times doing some heavier things that I did feel like it could benefit from having a couple extra cores. And well, now we finally do have that in this quad-core i7 here in the 2020. And yeah, running benchmarks, there are some pretty sizable improvements. Now, first of all, I think now you can kind of notice that True Tone display. Now that I'm showing a white screen, the 2018 definitely looks bluer than the 2020 with True Tone. So I think you can kind of see that difference now if you couldn't before True Tone and without True Tone. So, yeah. But onto the performance. So let's look at these comparisons here. So here's Geekbench 5, the late 2018 MacBook Air. Single core score of 811, multi-core score of 1710. The 2020 quad-core i7. So this is a dual-core i5, and this is a quad-core i7 in the 2020. So our single-core score is now 1232. 1232 up from 811. And 3220 up from 1710. So obviously going from 2 cores to 4 cores makes a really big difference. So yeah, that is absolutely substantial. So just for reference, of course, I have the quad-core i7 model here. But like I said earlier, I feel like a lot of people might not opt for the highest end model. They might just opt for the $150 upcharge to go up to the quad-core i5. Whereas it's a $250 upcharge to go to the quad-core i7. So if you do just get the quad-core i5, I don't have one here, but let's just take a look at what the Geekbench score is for those that I find online here. So single core here, 1232 versus 3220. Okay, so the i5 quad core is getting a 1047 and 2658. So 1047, 2658, 1232, 3220. So there's still a good bit of performance gain by going with the i7, but still it's not like the i5 is a weak processor. Compare it back to the 2018. So we have the 1047 for single core. Here we get an 811. Again, multi-core, 2658, well over 2,000. You're only getting 1710 on the 2018 dual-core i5. So definitely the quad-core, even if it's just an i5 quad-core, makes a big difference over the 2018 dual-core i5. So, yeah, definitely still a lot better than the 2018, but not quite as good. There is still a somewhat significant improvement going from the i5 to the i7 quad-core. It should also be noted that the base model 2020 MacBook Air is a dual-core, just like the 2018 was in the i5. Now, you may think, though, that it's actually a downgrade because it's now a dual-core i3 instead of a dual-core i5, but that's actually not the case. It looks bad on paper, but if you get the 2020 dual-core i3, the performance is actually going to be on par with, maybe even a little bit better than the dual-core i5 previous generation. I don't have the benchmarks here, but I did see them before, and I think they are close, but slightly higher even. So even if you go with the base model i3, you're still going to be getting as good as or better performance than this late 2018 that was an i5. The difference is it's Intel 10th gen processors. They're just more efficient. Okay, so now we have to look at graphics. This is the Geekbench Metal test, and wow. So one great thing about the Intel 10th gen processors, they come with Iris Plus graphics instead of the old Intel UHD graphics. And boy, at least in terms of benchmarks, it makes a very astronomical difference. I mean, look at the 2020 here. I mean, we're pushing 10,000 metal score compared to barely over 2,000 metal score on the 2018. So yeah, obviously the 2020, it still has, shared graphics with the CPU. It's not dedicated graphics or anything, but Intel Iris graphics, they for shared graphics, they hold their own. Okay, so I mentioned that these both have really fast PCIe-based SSDs, but let's compare them. So we got the 2018 here, 2020 here, and I should know that these are both the 500 gig models. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so this is a 2018 with a 500 gig SSD. Okay, I'll just stop it there. Okay, so as you can see, pretty good. Yeah, so well over a gigabit for each. We're able to check off all the checks here as far as its capabilities. So yeah, nothing slow. The processor might have been significantly weaker in the 2018, but the SSD is still lightning fast. So let's look at it in the 2020. All right, and this is something I noticed before. Obviously, it's still plenty fast, but it actually is slightly faster in the 2018. The write speed is actually clocking in faster on the 2020, but for the read speed, we got like almost 2 gigabit there, whereas we got like 1.2 gigabit on the 2020. So. Yeah, that's interesting. So it seems like the older SSDs might have actually been a little bit faster, and I think I actually read about that. That's part of the reason why they were able to reduce the starting price of the MacBook Airs, because they put slightly faster SSDs, or rather slightly slower SSDs in them after the 2018 model. Not that it matters much because they're still super fast. They're still both well over gigabit speeds. But still, it's interesting to know that it is, I guess, a very slight downgrade. But you're not going to notice, like, oh my God, this SSD is so slow in the 2020 compared to the 2018. They're still both very fast. It's just interesting to know that it was actually a little bit, tiny bit faster in the 2018s compared to the 2020s. It looks like that one highest test there, I can't quite check it off on the 2020, whereas I could check all of them on the 2018. But, I mean, the 2020 is still super fast. Okay, I thought this would be a little bit of fun, just for kicks, to throw in In comparison to a 2011, a late 2011 MacBook Pro 15-inch. This thing was my workhorse for many years. It got me all the way through college and grad school, and it heck of a computer. But yeah, this actually has a quad-core i7 in it. Just like the 2020 MacBook Air here, except for it's not just like the 2020 MacBook Air. This is a second generation i7, whereas this is a 10th generation i7. This one is higher wattage though, but as you can see, yeah, so that single core score of 631 does not hold up very well, even to the 2018 MacBook Air. Although what I find very interesting is because this old 2011 is a quad core and this 2018 MacBook Air is only dual core, as you can see in the multi-core, the old clunker does beat it. Yeah, 2393, still pulling off a respectable score compared to the very lowly 1710 of the 2018 MacBook Air. But hey, it really is important to to double your cores. For multi-core work really will have a difference. And you can see it here. Even this 2011 is beating the 2018 in multi-core. So I got to give it credit for that. But it can't keep the streak going with the 2020 though. Of course, absolutely blows it away in single core. But then multi-core edges it out pretty heavily in that too. 3220 to the 2393. But I do give this, I gotta give this old i7 credit in multi-core for beating out the 2018. But single core, yeah, both beat it handily. So I just thought it'd be a fun little comparison. I wanted to also run a graphics test and get a number on that. But first of all, this is not compatible with metal, so I couldn't do a metal test. I could do OpenCL, but I tried it twice and it kept failing. So but spoiler alert, it wouldn't be good. This does have dedicated graphics, but it's like it really, even by the day's standards of when this came out, it wasn't great. It was like 512 megabytes AMD. This is the model that's notorious for failing. The graphics fail like if you breathe on it the wrong way. So yeah, so I just thought this would be a fun little comparison here though of the CPU performance. And I also thought it would be fun to do a little disk speed test on this 2011 MacBook Pro. Now, of course, I don't have the mechanical hard drive that this came with. That would be just abysmal. I do have a Samsung Evo SATA SSD in here, so let's see how that does. It's not going to be as good as the PCIe's, but the test just takes so much longer to run. Hey, not terrible. I mean, better than a mechanical hard drive. Yeah, nothing like a PCIe drive, though. Okay, so let's put the graphics to work in these laptops here. So I know that on the 2018, I always did have problems on YouTube watching anything much higher than 1440p. 4K would kind of start and stop on me. If it was 60 FPS, I really couldn't go above 1080 60 without it having an inconsistent experience. So I already tested the 2020, and yeah, I can do 1440p 60, no problem. I could do 4K 30 on the 2020 without an issue. So I could already tell the graphics are better for watching videos on YouTube even. But what about 4K 60? Let's put to the test 4K 60. They're both going. Oh, you can see the 2018. 2018 had a buffer for a second, had to stop. Oh, they're good. It's stopping again. So far, it looks like smooth playback on the 2020. Okay, another stoppage on the 2018. Again, this is 4K 60 FPS video in YouTube. Another stoppage. So far, smooth playback completely on the 2020, and a lot of stoppages here. Yeah. Another stoppage on the 2018. I could hear the fans ramping up. Fans ramping up on both of them. Okay, so far we have pretty smooth playback on the 2020 i7. A lot of stoppages on the 2018. There it is, stuttering again. Okay, so I think I can stop it there. So it's pretty clear that, 4K 60 is out of the question for the 2018. It's not watchable. Whereas, pretty darn good on the 2020. Not bad. Now, I will say, I did before this watch some 4K 60 extensively on here, and it isn't perfect. It will hit a stutter every now and then, and it will get hot and loud, but not to the extent of the 2018. Okay, enough of the cutesy stuff. I know the burning question that everyone has is, can the 2020 MacBook Air play Fortnite? Wait, that's not the question you had? Well, too bad. We're going to find out anyway. So here we are in Fortnite. The settings I have this on are all low. I have it on the lowest resolution available on this computer, which is 1440 by 900. And for the 3D resolution, I have that set at 85%. And VSync is off. So all low settings, pretty much. So diving in here, we had FPS in the teens a lot. We're breaking 20 now a little bit, as you can see. Flirting with 30. Now, obviously, it's playable. Doesn't look the best. Yeah, no one. I really hope you're not buying a MacBook Air thinking you're getting a gaming laptop. For the price of even the base model MacBook Air, for under $1,000, especially if you look at something like the Dell Inspiron gaming series, you can get a pretty decent laptop that'll do some real gaming. But obviously it's going to be heavy and chunky and plasticky and have poor battery life, everything that the MacBook Air is not. So obviously it depends what your priorities are. But if you're looking for a MacBook Air, you're probably not even, considering a laptop like that. So you shouldn't expect it to be a gaming laptop, which it isn't. But with that being said, as you can see now, I'm flirting with 40 FPS. So I'm getting 30 or above here. So yeah, it's definitely playable. If you turn the settings down, almost all the way, yeah, it's definitely playable. You definitely hear the fan ramping up, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm getting like, 30 FPS. I mean to do that. And, it's playable. Doesn't look the best. Obviously, if you're used to playing this on an Xbox or like my PC that has a GTX 1060 6 gig in it, it looks about 1,010,000 times better on there. It even looks a lot better on my iPad Air. It's amazing what those little iPads can do in terms of graphics performance. But yeah, can I play Fortnite? Yes. Is it the best experience possible for Fortnite? Absolutely not. But it can play it at a respectable frame rate if you turn stuff down a lot. Okay, so what's the final verdict on this 2020 MacBook Air? Well, first of all, is it better than the 2018 or 2019 Retina MacBook Airs? I would say absolutely in almost every way. Really, the only downsides, if you could call them that, are, my weird point I brought up about aesthetically kind of liking the butterfly keyboard better, but that's just me being weird, and a lot of people won't care about that at all and just love the fact that it feels so much better and that it's so much more reliable that who cares. So that's really not even a point that much. But I guess the only other thing is, I don't know about the i3 2020, but the quad-core 2020s seem to run noticeably louder and warmer than the 2018 or 2019 MacBook Airs. And that is understandable, being that they're packing more power into the same size, really thin, small package. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. Most people will want that to be a welcome change to bring more power, but just, keep in mind that it is somewhat noticeable. So not terrible, but yeah. But everything else, yeah, it's better than every way. The 2020 has really knocked it out of the park. This is a really great laptop that almost anyone would have a hard time not liking if you like to use Macs. So was it worth it to actually go with the i7? Well, if you look at Apple's website here, So the dual-core i3, to upgrade from that to the quad-core i5, $100 upcharge. I think earlier I said $150. That's actually not right. It's only $100. For $100, I'd say that upgrade is worth it for almost everybody. You're doubling your cores for $100. I mean, I think that's really, I think that's the way to go. Like I said, the only thing to keep in mind is it might be a little bit warmer and run a little bit louder having those extra cores, but I think you'll really like it for the performance. Now, it's an extra $150 on top of that to go to the i7. Is that worth it? Well, the $100 for the i5, definitely. i7 for the $150 extra, so that's a total of $250 on top of the price of the base i3. I'd say it can be worth it. Listen, it's like this. If you have extra money, first of all, if you have any extra money at all, definitely go to the i5. I think you'll really, really, really be glad you did. If you have any extra money left on top of that, the first thing I would do is not go to the i7. I would say go to the 16 gigs of RAM. Now, that's $200 instead of $150, but I think it's worth it. You're doubling your RAM. I think for what a MacBook Air is usually used for, I think RAM will be the more noticeable upgrade. So I would go to the 16 gigs of RAM. Only after that upgrade, and you have money left over after that, would I say, okay, yeah, go ahead and upgrade the extra $150 to the i7. Because, I mean, as you saw by the numbers on the benchmarks, it does have a pretty respectable improvement in performance, even up from the i5. But in real world performance, yeah, there might be cases where you notice it, but it's not going to be drastic. It's not going to be like going from the dual core i3 to a quad core i5. Definitely make that upgrade. This upgrade, only do it after you've already upgraded the RAM and still have money left over. If you look at Apple's lineup right now, so you have this, and the 13-inch MacBook Pro is what you would compare it to naturally, but that has not been upgraded yet. Now, at the time of this video, by the time you're watching that, it might actually be different. There's talks of them doing that real soon, but so it's going to be interesting, because right now, this versus the 13-inch MacBook Pro as it is right now, the 2019 model with the butterfly keyboard and 8th gen Intel processors, I mean, that thing's going to have a lower benchmarks in single core, lower benchmarks in graphics. Yeah, I'd say definitely right now go with this over the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Now, the 13-inch MacBook Pro will have more powerful multi-core, and doing anything over a longer course of time that requires more demanding power, it's going to win out because it has better thermals than this and more powerful processors. So, yeah, that will win out overall in long-term, sustained heavy-duty tasks. But in short bursts and for pretty much everything else, this is the winner. So I think it's really hard to go wrong with a MacBook Air 2020 unless you really need the extra power. But the thing is, if you really, really need the extra power, like especially extra graphics power, the ability to do sustained workloads with better cooling, you're probably going to be looking at the 16-inch MacBook Pro anyway. So regardless of what happens with the 13-inch MacBook Pro, even if they update it pretty soon, even if they make it a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which they might do, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is really the one that you want to go with regardless. If you truly need a lot more power than the MacBook Air, the 13-inch MacBook Pro will give you some more power, but not a lot more power. I think for most people that have to do, very heavy-duty tasks at a professional level, that are graphic intensive, like a lot of video editing, and they have to do it quickly, you're going to be going with the 16-inch MacBook Pro anyway. So I'd say if you really need that, that's the only model that has dedicated graphics, and it's going to blow away even the Intel Iris Plus by a long shot. You could legitimately even game on those. Still not a gaming laptop, but you can. But yeah, those are what you want to go with if you truly need a workhorse. But if you just want an amazing everyday laptop that can do all your everyday tasks, plus handle 4K video to watch, and also be able to do some lighter duty, very light duty gaming, or lighter duty video editing, I think the MacBook Air can accomplish that. And it's in a great form factor, and I think a lot of people will really, really like it. Maybe if you really want to, hold off until early next year. I think is when they're probably going to be coming out with their ARM-based MacBooks. That's going to be really interesting to see how those go. I mean, those could blow these Intels out of the water. I don't know, because the iPads with the ARM-based processors, they really, really give Intels a run for their money. Like I said, my iPad Air plays Fortnite decently better than this MacBook Pro or this MacBook Air does. So yeah, it's really interesting to see. So you might want to wait around for the 14-inch MacBook Pro. You might want to wait and see what that whole ARM processor business is going to bring us. But right now, if you're buying a laptop and you buy the MacBook Air, you're probably not going to be too sad that you did, because it's a pretty great laptop, and I'm really glad that Apple refreshed them this year and gave them better processors and a lot better keyboard. So yes, I would recommend it.